Hey, what's up? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm from Niche Site Project. This is just going to be sort of a behind the scenes video, like a real deal behind the scenes. So it is like a Thursday morning, and I'm going to be sending out an email tomorrow. And I just want to go through the process of how I'm drafting the email at this point. So it's a little different than what I have been doing, but I'm sort of changing up my workflow and I'm enjoying it. So let's go over there and check it out. All right. So the number one thing is coffee. So that I do have the coffee going there, and it looks like a dirty cup, but really that's just cinnamon up there. So forgive me on that, but coffee is key. So you'll notice the high-tech workflow that I have going on here, and that's a legal pad. And basically, I kind of, sketch out what I want to cover. And in here you can see I do have a new blog post that I'm drafting right now, or I drafted earlier this week, and I'm going to publish it. And that is a 500K case study update. Additionally, I also want to talk about survey that I'm going to send out, so this is something I haven't been doing much of, but it could be interesting. So I thought I'd give it a try in this sort of Friday. I don't always do the same format on these Friday emails, but a lot of times it has something to do with, just an update post where there's several links. So I it's not a roundup, but maybe it is a roundup of my content at this point, but I don't do the same format every week, and that's the real point. So I want to link to an Empire Flippers guest post that I did, and I want to link to the case study update, and then I do have a mini course coming out next Tuesday via email. So the other thing that I may want to put in there is if I'm going to do a webinar next Tuesday, which I probably will. I've been doing a webinar each Tuesday for several weeks, like 10 or so. So I need to schedule that, and usually I'll just put that in a PS. Those tend to be just sort of a secondary thing that I add in the email. So when it comes down to it, if I just put this in the email, it would be super boring and no one would really care. So you want to try and tell a story a little bit. And again, my high-tech workflow is essentially writing out a little story. So in this case, right, this actually is, I'm just telling you about my day, right? So in this case, this week I was doing my taxes, which, there's always something to complain about with your taxes, and people can relate to it. So I thought, hey, I'll add that in there, and I'll let you know how I'm dealing with it. Which this year, to be honest with you, it's been going a little bit better, and I explain it in the email. So here I tell the story. I won't go into the nitty gritty right here, but I say taxes, blah. Again, that's relatable, but the thing is, so I tell the story, but I do realize there's some practicality about having the links and your calls to action sort of further up. So, I interrupt my flow right here, and then I come over here and I say, before I tell you about that stuff, I want to get you to take a look at these three things, the same three things that I mentioned over here. So in this case, I'll just put the bullet points, and then I go on with telling the story. So, the way this worked is I outlined first. This was the first step, kind of what I wanted to include. And then I wrote out my story, and then I created a bit of an open loop, they call it. So I mentioned, something surprised me about my taxes. And then before I actually tell you what surprised me about the taxes, I tell you about the things that I want to get out there in the open, and then I bring it back around to the taxes, and then I'll jump back over here. So that's the arrows. You'll see the arrow there and the arrow there. And essentially I just inserted what I wanted to mention in the middle of my story. And then because we like to hear stories as humans and people, I interrupted the story and I didn't give you a conclusion. And then later on, I'll tell you about the conclusion right here. And then I normally put a PS in the email just to summarize it. In this case, I'm not 100% sure what I'll put in the PS, but I'll figure it out once I move it over and type it into Aweber. So that is how it goes. And again, don't forget the coffee, one of the most important features. All right, I'm back. And basically, I'm just interested if you're enjoying this sort of behind the scenes type video. Again, it's really raw behind the scenes, and it is probably the boring stuff, right? So I don't think it's too interesting because I'm sitting down trying to do work and come up with ideas, but some people like this sort of detail, and it's applicable to anything else you're working on. And I will mention, working on a notebook and with pen and paper, for me it's super helpful because when I sit down at my laptop, there's like a million distractions. It is an endless stream of notifications and different ways that I can get off task. So if I stand up and work on the counter over here behind me, it really makes it, I have no choice but to do the work, which is it's a good place to be. So, overall, I think working on a notebook and then transferring it over is something I'm gonna stick with it for at least a couple weeks and see how it goes. But anyway, we'll see you next time and hope you enjoyed the video.